Okay, I would like to preface this review by first stating that I am not a Superman fan. I am a James Gunn fan. I enjoyed the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, and from what I've seen of Suicide Squad, I mostly enjoyed that too. What I like about James Gunn's work is that it's very convoluted in its approach. I mean, it's very disjointed, it's kind of chaotic. There's like a kind of order to the madness and the chaos of James Gunn's approach to narrative and story. It reminds me of a comic book, where if you're flipping through the pages of a comic book, you have all the different panels, and each page may, shift to different areas of a story, and you get multiple characters and multiple events that occur, and as you flip through the pages of the comic book. So James Gunn is really perfect for making a movie that's based on a comic book. What it also reminds me of is maybe anime. As a matter of fact, I have an anime right here called Paprika. Paprika is an anime that is very colorful with a bunch of interesting characters, and it's very bizarre and goofy and humorous. And that to me is the flavor of James Gunn. And if you're not into stuff like this, then maybe you're not going to be into James Gunn. But since I'm more into stuff like this than I am Superman, seeing a combination of Superman and brought with this kind of style of storytelling is what really gets me interested more in the project. If I wasn't a Superman fan before, I am now after seeing James Gunn's interpretation of the character. So I've seen Superman twice now. I seen it first in IMAX 3D, and then I went back to check it out in regular IMAX, which was kind of terrible, actually. I found the 3D IMAX experience to be, I'm glad it was my first experience because it was way more rewarding. The 3D IMAX experience with Superman was fantastic. The picture was clear. You had depth, a lot of depth to the picture, which is what you want in a 3D experience. You also had some, coming out of the screen effects as well with the 3D. So it was done well in 3D. Singing in regular IMAX at my particular theater, I think they screwed up. I think what they did, because the image was blurry for a vast majority of the time watching it. It was like blurry. I think they showed us the 3D film without telling us it was 3D. So it was like we went in to see regular IMAX and we got 3D IMAX without the glasses. It was completely retarded. I don't know what happened there. So it wasn't as good of an experience. But I stuck it out for the second viewing anyway. And that just goes to show how much, even though I was watching the movie the second time with a blurry image, a blurry 2D image on the screen, I was still captivated by the directing, the cinematography, the story, the characters. Every aspect of the film is just a good time. And that's the best way I can describe it. This is one of the most fun I've had at the movies for a long time. I'm usually into movies that are more, I guess, less fun, maybe more dealing melancholy or horror or drama, um, serious movies that are having maybe a more serious tone, or maybe movies that if it does have humor, it's dark humor. I like my humor like I like my coffee, pitch black. But with Superman, it's very different. It's lighthearted, it's uplifting. There are some dark humor moments, which I appreciate. I think it's one of the reasons I like James Gunn is because I kind of think he plays around with some dark humor aspects in his movies, which I really like. That's my sense of humor. And like, I liked that he gave Superman, because one of my biggest complaints has always been about Superman is that he is way too overpowered. I like my superheroes to have some level of vulnerability so that I can, as a human, relate to their struggle. And it's overcoming their struggles that makes them more epic in my eyes. If a character like Superman is just epic from the jump, and it's like nothing can challenge him, I cannot relate to a character like that. I don't see a point in having a character like that on screen. But if the character is shown to have certain levels of vulnerability, if the character keeps getting beaten down but getting back up, and the moral of the story with Superman was his weakness wasn't a product of him being just weak. Superman is not weak. He is the strongest, what they call a meta-human out there, right? He's not, the thing that makes him weak is his empathy, his not wanting to hurt anybody, or wanting to give everyone, no matter how terrible they are, a second chance, right? So that is Superman's wall. That is Superman's barrier that's keeping him from being the kind of nothing can challenge him, nothing can stop him. It's his empathy. It's his willing to go the extra mile, not to just quickly take out the giant, monster, because he wants to save the monster at his life at the same time. So he's constantly trying to figure out how can I approach this situation so that I don't take him out immediately. Maybe during our battle with one another, I can have a conversation with this individual, try to hear them out, and through the conversation, maybe instead of having a change instead of beating them in a physical battle, we can have an exchange of thoughts, and maybe I can change their mind, or maybe I can change their heart. And through that is the achievement that Superman is trying to reach. That is what he wants to achieve. He wants to change minds and hearts. He doesn't want to just beat them down into submission, or beat them down in combat, which he could obviously easily do. But he constantly, what may seem like him taking L's is him going the extra mile to try to find another way, another approach of getting around difficult situations. And I think that's so brilliantly shown when he finally had enough of his clone, what turned it out to be his Ultraman, turns out was his clone. And he whistles for Superdog to come in And then, you know, he has this epic battle, right? He showed what he was capable of in that moment. And I think I like threw a lot of people off because it's like, where has this Superman been the whole film? Well, the whole film, he hasn't really shown that Superman because he was talking. If you really pay attention, he's talking to the people he's fighting, and he's talking from a level of trying to understand where they're coming from, because that, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day is what makes Superman super. That's getting at the heart, the humanity of who he is as a person. And I think James Gunn nailed it. You know, I think I've always had a concept of who Superman was, who he is. And this is the first time I feel like I've seen a Superman done right. A Superman that someone understood. It's like that scene where he actually, you know, they're fighting the giant monster. And they got Green Lantern, Mr. Fantastic. They're fighting the monster, and Superman goes out of his way to save a squirrel that's about to get trampled on. And it's like, all life to Superman is precious. All life is precious to Superman. He's thinking about all life and how he can save, with his powers, all life. And it's like when Lois tells him, you know, why are you going out of your way to save Crypto? He's just a dog. And he shows his super level empathy in that scene when he says, yes, but he's alone and he's probably afraid. It's in that moment where Superman showed he has a level of empathy that goes beyond, is a super empathy that goes beyond normal levels of empathy. He puts himself in other people's positions and other people's shoes, and he empathizes with their struggles, with their suffering. And he knows with his strength, he can help try to fight and make it better, make the world a better place. What else can I say? I really love what James Gunn did with this movie, Superman. It gives me hope for the DCU. I think, you know, when James Gunn was at the helm with Marvel, with his Guardians of the Galaxy, I was a fan of Marvel. Now I'm becoming a DC fan because James Gunn is at the helm, and I am mostly, at the end of the day, a fan of James Gunn, and I look forward to more of his work in the future.